In the desolate reaches of Kalara IV's Kvath Desert, where temperatures soared during the day and plummeted at night, Dr. Elias Mercer trudged on with nothing but an unshakable sense of curiosity. The planet had been logged in the Galactic archives as barren and inhospitable, its harsh conditions considered hostile to nearly all forms of life. Yet for weeks, Mercer had been exploring its uncharted desert, driven by rumors of unusual energy readings faintly detected from orbit. The sun was merciless, and dust storms swept across the horizon, yet something kept urging him forward. After a grueling trek, his scanner finally pinged with a signal, stronger and more consistent than anything he'd seen before. His heart raced as he adjusted the scanner, slowly realizing that the source was buried directly beneath his feet. Digging down with his hands, he uncovered the top of what appeared to be an ancient stone structure, its surface intricately carved and untouched by time. Mercer worked methodically, pulling away layers of sand to reveal a long-buried entrance. Hours passed, and finally, the sun dipped low, casting shadows across the alien architecture that began to emerge from the sands. What lay before him was a city like no other. It stretched beyond his line of sight, with towering buildings, grand columns, and terraces, all made of a material that seemed to absorb and reflect the dwindling light with an otherworldly glow. The architectural style was entirely unique. Sharp geometric patterns intertwined with sweeping organic shapes, creating an aesthetic that felt ancient and advanced, alien yet oddly familiar. Mercer stood at the threshold of the city, dwarfed by stone archways, the intricate carvings catching the last rays of sunlight and casting strange shadows. Even after eons buried beneath shifting sands, the city seemed almost alive. As Dr. Mercer stepped deeper into the ancient city, his gaze fell upon the intricate carvings that covered nearly every surface. Massive stone walls stretched around him, each adorned with symbols that pulsed faintly with an iridescent glow, casting delicate, shifting patterns onto the dusty ground. The symbols themselves were like nothing he'd ever seen, each one an elegant combination of sharp, angular lines and swirling curves, giving the impression of both language and art, a silent chorus from a lost civilization. He moved his light over a series of carvings that spiraled across a nearby column, observing that some symbols seemed almost mathematical in nature, while others looked like celestial maps or complex equations. Entire walls appeared dedicated to constellations and cosmic phenomena, depicting vast star systems and planets, some marked with symbols that suggested importance or reverence. At certain angles, these carvings seemed to come alive, as though their creators had embedded hidden layers meant to be viewed in specific light or perspective. In one section of the city, Mercer found a vast fresco displaying beings who bore a distant resemblance to humanoids, yet with elongated limbs and haunting, deep-set eyes. They were shown performing what seemed to be rituals or scientific work, holding up strange, glowing orbs and assembling structures that seemed to float in midair. The walls around these frescoes were layered with smaller, more intricate symbols, as if documenting each step in some ancient rite or experiment. As he walked, he noticed a recurring motif, a series of concentric rings around a central point, carved repeatedly and varying in size, scattered throughout the city. He found himself tracing his fingers over these rings, feeling an almost magnetic pull toward them, a sensation he couldn't quite explain. The carvings continued endlessly, telling stories of this lost people, their technology, their art, and perhaps the struggles and mysteries that had shaped their existence. As Dr. Mercer ventured deeper into the ancient city, he began to notice something that defied all logic. In the heart of this long-buried civilization, dim lights flickered to life as he moved past. At first, he dismissed it as a trick of the light, a mere reflection of his headlamp against the shimmering carvings. But as he pressed forward, the lights grew brighter, casting an eerie, spectral glow that pulsed in rhythm with his footsteps. The power source seemed woven into the very structure of the city, a hidden energy grid buried within the walls, floors, and columns. Small, luminescent conduits ran along the walls, concealed within the intricate carvings and symbols that now looked more than decorative. They pulsed with a soft, steady glow, growing brighter the deeper he went. The city seemed alive, responding to his presence with an awareness that sent chills down his spine. Each step seemed to activate another section, lighting a path that hadn't been seen in millennia. Reaching a grand plaza in the center of the city, he saw towering pillars adorned with mysterious blue crystals. The crystals pulsed with an inner light, casting a strange twilight over the expanse of the plaza. He noticed clusters of smaller devices scattered around the plaza, each embedded in the stonework as though seamlessly fused with the architecture. When he approached, the devices emitted a soft hum, their surfaces warming beneath his touch. Curious, he examined one closely, wiping away dust and sand to reveal a surface covered in delicate engravings that glowed faintly, like circuitry. It was clear now. The city's builders had mastered an energy system beyond anything he'd encountered, a source that had somehow endured ages of abandonment and decay. The power didn't come from traditional sources either. There were no reactors, no fossil fuels, no wires. Instead, it seemed to draw energy from something subtler, something that defied his understanding of physics. Mercer continued forward, noticing that the energy intensified near the center of the plaza, where a massive, polished obelisk rose toward the sky. This monolith, towering above him, pulsed with a more profound, resonant hum, as though it were the heart of the city's power. Approaching it, he reached out a cautious hand, feeling the warmth emanating from its surface and the gentle vibration that seemed to resonate with his own heartbeat. It was as if the entire city had been waiting for someone to arrive, to reawaken it after centuries of silence. Dr. Mercer's pulse quickened as he pieced together the significance of the images and carvings he'd seen so far. Beneath layers of sand and silence, this alien city held an astonishing record, a historical tapestry interwoven with the essence of a lost civilization. Moving from one fresco to the next, he found an entire wall dedicated to depictions of planets, some familiar and others utterly foreign, each crafted with intricate detail and adorned with symbols he could only guess at. Then he froze, eyes widening as he recognized one celestial body that stood out unmistakably: Earth. Etched in the stone was a representation of Earth's continents, recognizable and exact, positioned among stars and neighboring planets in their correct orbits. The implications made his head swim. This civilization had mapped Earth with staggering precision, and they had done so ages before humans had even developed written language. He ran his fingers over the contours of the carved Earth, feeling the weight of this discovery settle in his bones. How could a species light years away from Earth have known of its existence? Tracing further, he noticed a pattern emerging, almost like a sequence of events spanning vast epochs. One section showed a lush, vibrant world filled with life and beauty. In another, scenes of alien figures traveling between stars, journeying through what appeared to be portals or some form of advanced travel technology. The figures were depicted as explorers and observers, taking note of different worlds, documenting their ecosystems, and even cataloging what seemed like forms of life, including, to his shock, early hominids. Deeper in the sequence, the images grew darker and more ominous. Battles erupted in the engravings, and strange creatures began to appear, shadowy, malformed beings that seemed to oppose the peaceful figures he'd seen before. It was as if they had encountered an existential threat, one that drove them into a desperate struggle for survival. Carvings showed the ancient city's inhabitants building defenses and amassing ships, retreating into fortified sanctuaries as the creatures encroached upon their world. The last section in the sequence depicted an exodus, a gathering of ships leaving their planet, the ancient architects of this city escaping toward distant stars in search of refuge. But before their departure, it seemed they had left behind markers, coordinates written in their own language and symbols, pointing toward specific worlds they had once visited. And among them, prominently marked, was Earth, indicated with unique, almost reverent symbols, as if it had been considered a special or even sacred destination in their journeys. As Dr. Mercer rested his hand on the obelisk, a surge of energy flowed through him, almost as if he'd triggered some hidden mechanism in the city's core. His vision blurred, colors and light enveloped him, and for a moment, he felt as though he'd been wrenched from his own body. When the haze cleared, he was no longer in the silent, dust-covered city. Instead, he was witnessing it in its prime. The city around him pulsed with vibrant life. Structures that now stood in silence and ruin towered in gleaming splendor, their alien metal and stone surfaces aglow with power. Streets bustled with alien beings, their forms elegant and elongated, their clothing flowing with a fabric that shimmered like liquid light. The air was filled with the sound of laughter, music, and the hum of technology woven into the very fabric of the city. He could feel a palpable sense of purpose in the air, a unity of minds dedicated to exploration, knowledge, and preservation. The vision shifted, and Mercer found himself within a grand hall lined with statues of dignitaries, scientists, and scholars. Each figure was immortalized in detail, their faces calm and wise, with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 secrets. He sensed their knowledge and ambition, their desire to reach beyond their own stars, and an understanding of life and the cosmos that far surpassed anything humans had yet achieved. Strange orbs of light floated around them, symbols or perhaps information, displaying mathematical equations and star maps, each pulse of light a testament to their intellect and achievements. But the vision darkened. The once thriving city seemed to shift as he watched, now caught in the grip of chaos and war. The streets were empty, the laughter replaced by the dull hum of emergency lights. Mercer saw alien soldiers and scientists alike rushing through corridors, their faces etched with desperation. Images of shadowy creatures, twisted and sinister, flashed before his eyes, strange beings that seemed to devour light itself. These creatures emerged from portals and attacked the city, their very presence sapping energy from its surroundings. In response, the inhabitants of the city devised great defenses. He saw a colossal energy barrier rising, encasing the city in a protective dome. Machines and weapons of intricate design were deployed, their power lighting the darkened skies. But no matter how advanced their defenses, the shadowy beings persisted, unyielding, pushing the civilization to its breaking point. Scientists and leaders met in frantic gatherings, charting possible courses of action, while a great fleet of ships assembled above the city, ready to leave. The scene shifted again, and Mercer now stood in the chamber of what looked like a council or a ruling body, where the last leaders of this civilization gave solemn orders. He could feel the anguish in their words, the weight of their decision to abandon their beloved home. As the vision faded, he saw the final exodus, ships rising into the sky, carrying the survivors of a culture that had thrived for millennia, vanishing into the vast expanse of space, with Earth marked as one of their possible destinations. As Dr. Mercer returned to his senses, the realization of what he had witnessed left him breathless. The visions painted a story that was not just about a lost civilization, but about a people who had left their home with the intent of survival and, perhaps, a plan to one day return. As he studied the alien symbols, he noticed something unsettling, a repeating set of glyphs, engraved in large patterns across the central plaza and the walls of prominent buildings. These symbols, at first unassuming, began to reveal a pattern. They formed a kind of countdown, interspersed with symbols that suggested renewal, resurgence, and rebirth. He delved deeper into the inscriptions, and it became clear that the city itself might be part of a sophisticated signaling system. The obelisk he had touched seemed not only to resonate with power, but to act as a beacon, emitting pulses of energy that were growing stronger with his presence. These pulses, he theorized, could be intended to reach the survivors or descendants of this lost people, wherever they might now reside among the stars. The message was unmistakable. The ancient civilization had left behind a failsafe, a way to signal their return, or perhaps to awaken long-dormant systems that could call them back to their ancestral home. The implications struck him hard. If this signal could reach across the cosmos, it would eventually reach those who had once lived here. Mercer studied more carvings around the obelisk, discovering depictions of stars and galaxies meticulously mapped to guide the lost descendants back to this very spot. Each star system was marked with ancient coordinates and encoded instructions, an invitation of sorts, hinting that they were not only meant to return, but that the city would awaken fully upon their arrival, resuming its former splendor and purpose. Yet, there were warnings etched as well. In the furthest reaches of the city, on walls that had cracked and crumbled, symbols of caution were painted in heavy, stark strokes. These warnings described the dark creatures Mercer had glimpsed in the visions, suggesting that they, too, might await this return, dormant and scattered throughout the city's depths. The ancient inhabitants seemed to have created the signal not only to call back their own people, but to alert them to the possible dangers lurking in their old home. Mercer took a step back, realizing that activating the signal could set into motion a chain of events that would draw attention from across the galaxy. There were too many unanswered questions. Had this civilization evolved and moved on, or would they indeed return in response to the call? And if they did, would they be prepared to encounter whatever shadows they had left behind?